Welcome to Sagas and Sass Season 3, brought to you by Geek Saga Entertainment. I'm Tara, along with fellow hosts Nick, Jonathan, and Nami.
This episode is going to focus on the series that technically brought us together, George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire.
If you're watching live, join us in the chat, or after the fact, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Sagas and Sass, or email us at sagasandsass@gmail.com to continue the conversation. First, we want to remind our listeners where they can find us as individuals. You can always find me on Twitter and other places as either at Nick Popio, at Sharply Dressed, or I think those are actually the only two I have, so I'll leave it there.
What about you, Nami? Where can everybody find you?
Well, you can find me on YouTube and Instagram at Nami Sparrow, and you can find me on Twitter. I think I'm still Neko Nami Cosplay there, but that's, I don't know, brains, man.
And as I am a middle-aged Luddite, I don't really have a social media presence of any kind other than Facebook with my friends.
And also, for those of you watching this live or possibly listening to this as a podcast, because I can only do so much editing, Jonathan, lucky him, is on vacation right now, hence the no video and the sound being a little bit choppy, but we're hoping his internet connection will improve and not degrade. Degrade throughout this. Anyway, you can find me, Tara, on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at A Geek Saga. Hi, branding. But don't forget that we now have a Patreon with 10 tiers ranging from $1 a month to $40 a month. It offers tons of ways to support us and receive some great perks in return. In fact, I recently updated some of our tiers, including new perks for our $3 per month guard tier and for all tiers from $5 a month on up, including early access to the new Geek Saga podcast series, which is my other show, Hot D Takes, which will cover HBO's House of the Dragon episode by episode. So you can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/geeksaga_entertainment. Nami, that's you.
Oh, I'm bad at this. Oopsies. As usual, we want to remind everyone that the views expressed on this show are those of the hosts as individuals and do not necessarily represent the show as a whole.
Okay, so as we mentioned, this is our 50th episode. Woo! I cannot believe that I can't believe we've done this many episodes. Honestly, it seems like it should have been more, maybe, but I don't know. It also seems like a lot. So we wanted to do something special, and in this case, I decided that we really needed to finally talk about A Song of Ice and Fire, because it is, as Jonathan mentioned at the very beginning, technically the series that brought us all together. So I actually met Nick first out of everyone here. Nick, you and I met at DragonCon 2012 when we cosplayed Cersei and Jamie in a small group for a photo shoot that only had like one person per character, right? It was a private thing. And wow, though there were very few Game of Thrones cosplays at DragonCon as a whole that year, even outside of our little group. But the Game of Thrones stuff, cosplay stuff everywhere, but particularly at DragonCon, really exploded after that year. And also, like, we haven't seen each other in person since DragonCon 2013 when we did modern Cersei and Jamie on the first night of the convention, and I think that was the only time I even saw you that year either. But yeah, so that's how we met. And I guess, like, what are your thoughts, remembrances, etc.? And I realize now we have lost Jonathan entirely.
Oh no. Hopefully he gets back before you cover how you knew him.
We can go last with him. But
yeah, exactly. So, and mostly I just have wonderful memories of those 2 years at DragonCon. Sadly, I haven't been back. Well, did I go back in? Anyway, yeah, I think 2013 was my last year that I've been able to go. And then the last few years when I wanted to try to go, COVID happened. And so that messed everything up. But hopefully I'll get there again. Anyway, it was amazing, like, that first year. That was right after the the show had debuted, and I mean, we knew that it was going to be big, but like the amount that it exploded over the next couple of years was just absolutely bonkers. Like, wow. So it's kind of cool that like we got to do that so early on and made that connection, and then like obviously it's continued even though we haven't seen each other since 2013. We've talked for years, and then we got to start doing this show together, which is amazing.
Yeah, I remember when I put out the post about this show. I mean, we were deep. It was. I didn't want to say deep into COVID. It was toward the, not the end, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It was August or September of 2020. So things had loosened up quite a bit, right? We weren't all stuck at home all the time anymore, that sort of thing. But yeah, I put out the word saying I would like to do a webcast series where we talked about one book series at a time and took our time going through them, et cetera, et cetera. And you were the first person who bit. And I was like, oh shit, yay. Because again, we hadn't seen each other in forever. And also like, I think because I was living in South Carolina the first however many years we knew each other, and you're in North Carolina, not too far away. And I know we had always talked about meeting up at the Ren Fair or whatever, but yeah, it's crazy that we haven't seen each other in that long. And hopefully soon in person.
Yes.
But it's been really, really great, like catching up. And even though we do not talk about Song of Ice and Fire on this show usually, wait, hold on a second. Jonathan's trying to get in, but it says devices not connected, so I can't let him in.
Jonathan.
Oh no, Robot Jonathan.
Oh, there he is. We got him. There we go. Okay, so so yeah.
Well, hopefully this will last better.
I don't know. I'd still shut your video off, honestly, because you're still a little robotic. But yeah, so it's been a long, however many years that we've known each other. But like you said, it was so cool being part of something so small. And I mean, Dragon Con was pretty small back then too. I think that this year at Dragon Con, it's actually going to be about the size that it was the first year we met. So that's going to be interesting. Bigger than last year, but not what it's been the past few years. So I'm pretty excited for that. But okay, so moving on. Next, I actually met Jonathan when he started attending Ice and Fire Con in, I think, 2015, right, Jonathan? Because you went to Ravenwood.
Correct. I was there for the last year of Ravenwood. I'm trying to remember if it was, how many years did you do Ravenwood? 3?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so it was definitely the last year of Ravenwood. I heard about your convention originally listening to a podcast of Ice and Fire, and some of the principals of that podcast attended, and it sounded like fun. And I've been a long-time convention goer, and then the second year they went, it sounded like even more fun. And finally, the third year, I bit the bullet and said, okay, what the hell, let's go to Ohio. And I haven't missed one since, and hopefully we'll not miss one again. But
yeah, I mean, even the virtual ones, we had the virtual ones, so I count those years.
It's a great time, and while we met that first year, I don't think we really met until the second year I was there, which was actually in Virginia. I mean, we technically met at Ravenwood, but I spent almost the entire first year of the convention sitting in a room with Amin talking about Song of Ice and Fire and some of us with a few other people. We basically sat in what was the library there for almost the entire convention. In theory, it was supposed to be one panel, and we sat and talked for like 14 hours. So,
well, so that brings up the question: how did you find out about Ice and Fire Con? Well,
it was through a podcast of Ice and Fire. I would listen to their podcast. They would talk about they attended this convention, and that's how I found out about it.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that, but I love giving them a plug because they were the first Song of Ice and Fire podcast, I believe.
They actually say they were not technically the first. There was one that started a little before them and lasted like 3 episodes and gave up. So they advertise themselves as the longest
running. Yeah. Okay. There you go. I mean, good for them. Good for them, though, that they're honest about that. All right. Well, and last but not least at all, Nami, I met you at DragonCon 2016, correct?
Yeah, 2016 sounds correct because I know that the year I went to DragonCon was the first year I was officially 21, and that would have been 2016. Is that math? I don't know what math is anymore.
Yeah, no, you definitely went to Ice and Fire Con after we met at DragonCon, but I met you at DragonCon. It could have been 2017, but I'm pretty sure it was 2016.
No, I think it was 2016, yeah.
Yeah, and even though it was at DragonCon, it was through a mutual, I mean, not somebody I speak with anymore, but it was at the time through a mutual friend who had been going to Ice and Fire Con for a couple years, and I believe was one of our volunteers. He helped with, I don't remember if he was an official volunteer at that point, but he helped us with like the performance contest and tourney, maybe. I don't know. Maybe he didn't. He did at some point, and it's hard to piece together all those years, but I met you through a friend from Ice and Fire Con, so still technically, even though we met at DragonCon and not even in Game of Thrones cosplay, because I remember the night we met, I was wearing Bunny Hutch Hunger Games Effie.
You were wearing Bunny Hutch Hunger Games Effie trinket, and I was wearing Bunny Hutch Ezra Scarlet from Fairy Tale.
Okay, yeah, I did not remember it. I don't know Fairy Tale, and didn't really remember what you were wearing at all, but I do very clearly, and that's the fact that I remember anything from that night, honestly, is hilarious.
Kind of a miracle, yeah. Well, no, the funny thing about that outfit, though, was that that was the year when somebody thought I was legitimately Ariana Grande.
Oh, yeah.
And it was one of the bartenders there. And so I didn't know what to say. So I signed a napkin for her and she gave me free drinks the rest of the night.
Did you ever kind of tell her that you weren't? Or did you
I think I just went with it.
Yeah, why would you tell her otherwise?
Yeah,
Let her buy you drinks.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Why would Ariana Grande need drinks bought for her, though?
Yeah.
I feel like she must have. She had to have figured it out by the end. Like she had to. Like
she just thought you were cute.
Listen, thank you, lovely bartender from 6 years ago. I'm sorry that I deceived you so terribly.
That would be amazing if they were watching this and they were like, "Oh my god, I can't believe
some random person
she
from Atlanta
wasn't Ariana Grande."
Could you imagine?
And I bought her drinks all night.
That's how the whole thing like falls to pieces.
So, Nami, again, like I said, even though we didn't meet in Game of Thrones cosplay or meet at Ice and Fire Con, we met because of Ice and Fire Con through a mutual friend who I only knew from Ice and Fire Con. But then you met Jonathan, obviously, at Ice and Fire. Or actually, did you? I can't remember when your first Ice and Fire Con was. So I feel like you guys might have actually met at San Diego Comic-Con.
I don't know that we met at Comic-Con, but I definitely met Jonathan at Ice and Fire Con 2018. And I remember this very clearly because that was my first Ice and Fire Con, and I was hella missing my mother. And for those of y'all who don't know, Jonathan's wife, Anna, is the sweetest woman ever. And I sort of like glued myself to her mom energy the first night I got there, and we just drank a lot of wine together, and I cried on her, and I was like, "Oh my god, mother!" And she's like, "Okay."
Yes, we all stand Jonathan and Anna in this house. Anna is the best.
So we were Anna was at the bar with you when I walked in, and I coming from panels where Anna doesn't usually tread nearly as many panels as I do, and I came back late at night, and you guys were chatting at the bar. That's what we met. So
Yep.
specifically on the right-hand side of the bar.
Oh.
Dang, you got so many details there.
Jonathan remembers things because he doesn't drink. He remembers
Seems overrated.
specifics.
In fairness, though, like it's not like I remember things when I don't drink. Like I just don't remember things.
No, yes, I'm same. I can't remember what I did 2 days ago, let alone 6 years ago or whatever.
I find memory just weird. There's things I remember like they were yesterday that happened 2 or 3 years ago, and then I can't remember something I did 20 minutes ago.
So so then even though Nami and Nick have not met in person yet, and neither have Jonathan and Nick, in the height of the panini, and I say height, and we already talked about this a minute ago, it wasn't really the height, but whatever. I'm saying it that way because it sounds fun. In the height of the panini, we all came together to form this webcast, and we truly bonded over the Grishaverse, which, to be honest, I think that I have a lot of Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones friends who really love the Grishaverse. So I do think that's still like a common ground. But yeah, let's get into our Song of Ice and Fire discussion. And we're going to kick it off by talking about our favorite book in the series. And I have very specific orders that I want to go in because I'm super type A, and there's a lot of favorite this, favorite that here, and I want everybody to get a chance to go first and last and etc. So I'm going to kick it off. My favorite book is A Feast for Crows. Clash of Kings is second, although per the ruling of the People's Court of Westeros at Ice and FireCon 2019, I recognize Knight of the Seven Kingdoms as being amazing as well. But my favorite book in the main Song of Ice and Fire series is A Feast for Crows. For the longest time, it was A Clash of Kings, which I feel like most people really love Storm of Swords, and it's not the bottom of my list. That's A Dance of Dragons. But I didn't love A Feast for Crows the first time I read it. I don't even know that I loved it the second time I read it. But then, or the third, or the fourth, I don't know. It was somewhere. I did the reread, and I'm blanking. The Boiled Leather reread, where you combine Dance of Dragons and Feast for Crows, and that really turned me off from both of those books for a while. Yes, it is. I would absolutely recommend that every Song of Ice and Fire fan do it once, but that really turned me off from both those books for a while because there were a lot of, it was mostly like the Sam and John chapters were like back to back, obviously, and talking about the same things. And I was like, ugh. And I love Sam. So much. And John's fine. Whatever. I don't hate him. I don't love him. He's just kind of there, brooding in the background, or the foreground. Unfortunately, I don't know. But after I did the Boiled Leather reread, the next time I reread the series, it was something weird where after doing that combination reread and then rereading it in publication order again, I was just like, holy shit, A Feast for Crows is amazing. Now, I always loved the Dorne parts of that book. I'm not super big on the Iron Islands parts, and even now I'm not super big on the Iron Islands chapters in that book, like Aaron, Damp Hair, whatever. But yeah, I really came to love Feast for Crows on my like 8th, 9th. But I reread them again the end of last year through the beginning of this year, and it stuck. It still sticks. I think it's because of my favorite POV character, partially. But yeah, I love A Feast for Crows a lot. So What is your favorite book, Jonathan?
Also, A Feast for Crows, because it is. You say 3 favorite characters, but I will say I have 4 favorite characters because one of those favorite characters is such a minor character, but I still absolutely love her. Is Jenna Lannister. I absolutely love that scene with Jenna Lannister. I think she's great, and so my other 3 favorite characters are
no favorite characters yet. This is just your favorite book,
yeah.
but I get it.
So,
Feast for Crows
so,
does have a great Gemma
so
Lannister.
Feast for Crows, and I absolutely hated Feast for Crows the first time through it, and I hated it because it was supposed to have Arya and Tyrion and all these other characters I love, and they weren't there. And it wasn't until years later, well, probably 2 years later, when it was clear that A Dance with Dragons was not coming out anytime soon, that I reread Feast for Crows and realized, okay, this is awesome. And the backstory and the Arya Martell adding to the Martell history, and it was just wonderful. So I also think A Feast for Crows was the best book, and I think probably my second favorite is the original Game of Thrones, just because it got me into the series.
Interesting. What about you, Nami?
So I also have the Jonathan answer, but kind of backwards. So my favorite book is actually the original Game of Thrones because when it comes to rereading, I usually run out of time or get distracted in the middle of my A Song of Ice and Fire rereads. So I'm pretty sure I have read Game of Thrones like 30 plus times at this point because that's the one that I always reread. And I'm like, yes, this. Also, because I read the book initially so long ago, it wasn't common knowledge, that Ned Stark dies, that this story starts like la-di-da, regular old fantasy. Oh, by the way, collect your corpses, bitch. And I still remember like the impact of that happening while I was reading that book and being like, what? They killed the main character. And like I cite like a few literary things or like media things like that. And like if you're an anime person, Madoka. Quick spoilers if you don't want to know about this, sort of zone out for the next 30 seconds. But Madoka, everybody knows the end of episode 3 when mommy gets her head chopped off and you're like, shit, this is magical girls with murder. Like there are stakes here, and you could come back if you cared about Madoka spoilers. I don't know how but hopefully this works out for you. But yeah, no, it's like
Madoka? What series is that?
It's called Madoka Magica. It's an anime series. It's cute.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really pretty and it's really cute and you should watch it. And nothing terrible happens at all. No way.
Listen, we're talking about A Song of Ice and Fire, so I don't think we need to pad things here about the other things we watch where terrible things happen.
Well, the funniest thing is that, like, both, like, in a very different way, I didn't expect Ned Stark to die when I read the series, because he's the main character. Like, nobody expected that. Yep. And just as people had that shock value when they watched the show for the first time, I had that with the book. And, like, obviously people don't get that anymore, because that's, like, it's like the commonplace knowledge of, like, Luke, I am your father. Like, oh, Ned Stark dies. Like, nobody, like, that's the one spoiler that everyone gets, And I feel like, in a way, Madoka has, like, sort of like kept that spoiler. Like anyone in an anime community knows about Madoka, but if you're not in an anime community, that show is absolutely unhinged. And it's really funny because yes. I watched it in like the first month after it was fully released, and my friend was like, yeah, you should watch this cute show. And to this day I would still like to stab them. But Nick knows. I could tell who watches anime here. But yes, so then obviously I do maintain that, like, if I have to pick an actual favorite that isn't, sort of like me being held hostage by the book I read the most, it is also A Feast for Crows, because it was good.
Wow.
Well, what about you, Nick? Last but not least, are you going to be our detractor?
I am. For me, it was A Clash of Kings.
Okay, well, that's not totally detracting. That's like a slight switch on me, because
absolutely. But like, Holy shit, that book had everything. You've got the Red Wedding. You've got
No, that's
Joffrey.
Storm of Swords. That's Storm of Swords.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow. I'm over here giving the wrong summary. Damn.
Clash of Kings is
Storm of Swords is what I meant to say.
Okay. Well, then you're total detractor.
Yeah, I am the detractor. That's what I meant to say, because I am a detractor. I am not like the twist of you. That book was wild. I will say, I do completely agree with Nami. Like, Game of Thrones, that was such a unique experience, I think. I read it kind of just before the show happened, or like when the show was announced. I started reading the series, and when Ned is killed at the end was just like, what the fuck did I just read? And then I think A Storm of Swords kind of like ups that.
Yeah.
And goes just completely fucking wild. Also, the immense satisfaction of the moment when Joffrey dies. Like, I don't know if there's ever been another character that I so desperately wanted to die and then got to have that moment of like, yes, they're fucking done. That was beautiful, and I loved every second of it.
Yeah, for me, like Game of Thrones, it is my third, I think. No, that's not right. It's my fourth. Storm of Swords is my third. Game of Thrones is my fourth. A Dance with Dragons is last.
Dance with Dragons doesn't even register on my list because I just don't like to think about it.
Yeah, it's too much Tyrion. But
Tyrion, will you please shut up?
Yes.
Well, yeah.
But Game of Thrones was to be honest, for me, it took me half the book to really get into it. Like, I was just slogging through it. Like, it wasn't bad. Like, I loved the descriptiveness. I loved a lot of the characters, kind of from the start, but it was just, even though things were happening, it just felt like a lot of plodding through stuff to get to the actual stuff that happened. And it really wasn't, I think, until, I mean, when Ned got in the fight in King's Landing with Jaime, and Jaime killed Jory, I was like, the fuck? Okay, so this is different. And then you get to Ned dying, and I'm like, that was, to be honest, I couldn't believe it. I was like, no, they lied. He didn't actually die. This is a fake out. Because, like,
they used a body double or something.
You see it. Well, you see it from like Sansa. Or you see it from Arya's point of view mostly, I think, and it's
just duct tape his head back on. It'll be fine.
It really wasn't until the Sansa, the next Sansa chapter, like after he dies, where I was like, oh shit, he's really dead. What the hell, man?
Yeah, he's dead.
He's dead. Now he's not like, what is it from Princess Bride? He's not just sort of dead. He's not kind of dead. He's like entirely, completely dead. So, all right. Well, now that we've said our favorite books, next we're going to go into our favorite house. So, Jonathan, you get to go first. What is your favorite house in Game of Thrones and why? Or Song of Ice and Fire, sorry.
So, I think based on the books alone, I like Martell the best. I am absolutely most fascinated by where that storyline is going. So I think that's why they're my favorite house. Because I find their potential storyline in the book series the most interesting to me.
Which is funny because they're probably almost entirely a red herring.
I understand that, but for some reason I'm
agree.
hooked on that herring.
All right, Nick.
They got me hook, line, and sinker.
Fishing puns. Oh my god, I love it.
Also,
So-
I need you to know that my brain went a different way and started to sing "Hooked on a Feeling," but like "Hooked on a Herring" instead.
Quick, write that,
Delightful.
Filk. What about you, Nick? Favorite house?
So like Jonathan and well, I won't spoil anybody else's favorite houses, but I really loved getting that insight into the wow, my brain is not fucking working right now.
Martells?
The Martells, yes, thank you. But I don't feel like I've gotten enough of them from the books to fall in love with them. And the series was just horrendous to them. So at least as of when we're recording this, I got to go with the Tyrells. I love them. Oleana, fucking queen. Just, I really enjoy that house. And,
It was
you know, I feel like they value aesthetics a lot, which is kind of my vibe. So if I were going to belong to a house, I think I would belong to House Tyrell.
Well, and I think the great thing about House Tyrell is that we learn quite a bit about them, but it's always through other characters. So we don't actually have to really see into their heads and possibly learn to dislike them.
Be disillusioned by them, yeah.
So, I mean, and there are some great fucking characters in House Tyrell. I mean, I love Garland. Garland Tyrell is one of my favorite minor characters. If his wife Leonette Fossaway is in a green apple Fossaway, I will riot. And I keep that's I think that might be the one question I would actually want to ask George if I ever got to ask him a very specific question. Was, you gotta tell me, please, which Fossaway house was Leonette in? Because if it's not green, I will riot. Because she's awesome.
Yeah, and like speaking of minor characters, like that I'm also obsessed with from House Tyrell, like Willis. Like I love Willis.
Yeah.
And his like
basically the whole house is. Yeah. I'm just like, I love them all.
Yep. I mean, we have to imagine that Willis got grievously injured in a tournament by Oberyn Martell, and his whole family's all pissy about it. And Willis is like, whatever, he's still my bud.
Like, cool.
I know he didn't do it on purpose. Like, he's still my bud. We still talk. We're pen pals. Like Raven pals, whatever.
What an actual reasonable human being in this fantasy setting. Like, what? Is it wild that I like him just because he's a reasonable human being? Maybe. I don't know.
Not in this series, really. Well, I'll go next. So I'm and I feel like this is gonna, again, Nick might be the detractor, but just based on what I know about Nami. But Martell, we do not recognize the show travesty and ruination of House Martell. We do not recognize it. But I love their house words. I love the dichotomy of Doran being the level-headed dude who actually has this whole plot and has been, sitting back and working on it for decades or a decade, more than a decade, whatever. I love Oberyn for everything Oberyn is, even though he kind of screws up in the end by getting too hot-headed, but that's also something I very much identify with. And yeah, they're I don't know, everything about them I love because I do very particularly identify with the dichotomy of Doran versus Oberyn, because I feel like I have both those parts in me. And then we get Ariane, Princess in the Tower, and God, the sand snakes, they're all so badass, and there's just nothing not to love. And again, like I said, I I do not recognize show travesty version of House Martell in my house. So, Nami, what about you? Last but not least, again.
Martell.
I don't have my Martell jersey, or I would have worn it. It's in South Carolina.
I have a snake tattoo on my leg because of how much I love the Martells. Like that's it. Also, like I hyper fixated on them, obviously, because, you know, first brown people in high fantasy, and their whole culture was described as being heckin' awesome to women. So I was like, yes, here for that. And then, of course, you have like, just like, in a way, I found Eloria to sort of be like an antithesis of Caitlin Stark, which is a bit odd to say, but hear me out, right? Like, Eloria is Oberyn's paramour right now, and she know that Oberyn has had past lovers, and like Oberyn do be a man whore, and she's okay with it. And not only does she have her daughters through Oberyn, who are the Bibsnicks, but she loves and appreciates Oberyn's older daughters through other paramours in a way that Caitlin Stark could fucking never. And like, I really love that about her. And like, just like the whole fact that like the Martell's whole ideology is like, we don't harm women and kids in a world that doesn't give a fuck. And I was like, yes. And like, just like, literally the moment, like, ever since I heard about like the tragedy of Princess Elia, what happened to her, I'm like, it's me, I'm Team Martell and I love them. And then I found out they were all brown, and it's like, it's me, I'm Team Martell and I love them. And then I found out that they love women and children, and that they wanted to put their whole thing is they want to put Myrcella on the throne now. And I'm like, oh hells yes, like Queen Myrcella, let's go. And then we got an Arianne POV, and I was like, hells yes, like Queen in the Tower, like doing her thing. Like, is she not that great at it sometimes? Oh, absolutely. But like, nobody in this book is actually objectively good at anything. So like, I forgive her at all of her faults, just as I do forgive all of the women their wrongs, because hell yes. But sorry, if you're interested in more of me forgiving women's wrongs in A Song of Ice and Fire, you should check out one of the panels that I did with a couple of my very good friends. And we did a panel about women and their agency in A Song of Ice and Fire. And you can actually find that on the Ice and Fire Con YouTube page. So you should all check that out, especially because those friends are awesome. Yeah.
That was 2019, right?
No, that was this year.
Oh, that was this year? Oh, shit. Okay. God, why did I think it was 2019? Okay, so yeah, if you want to check out a great panel on women in agency in Song of Ice and Fire, go to the Ice, just Google, because apparently YouTube doesn't give out usernames anymore. Google Ice and FireCon YouTube and check out the Ice and FireCon 2022 playlist. So on that note,
I should probably add though that my second favorite is the Tyrells for the same girl power reason, just because I feel like the show especially just pulled together this idea of the Tyrell Cousin Club being like supportive ladies for all of the other ladies in the family, and I'm just like, yes, I love it. Imagine how Cersei could have thrived if she had this.
I love Cersei so much, but she's so bad.
She's basically the worst.
And speaking of characters,
absolutely.
And speaking of characters, favorite characters. So what we're going to do here is I want y'all to give your top 3 favorite characters. You are welcome to briefly mention favorite minor characters, because we do also stand minor characters in this house. And then also please talk about your favorite POV character if that character is different from your top 3 favorite characters. So Nick, your turn to go first.
So my favorite characters are more or less in order: Sansa, Brienne, and Jaime. And my favorite POV character is Jaime, mostly because I feel like we get to see so many really interesting, fascinating things through his eyes. And
favorite POV character is hard for me because I agree. Jaime is up there.
he also, I think, has one of, at least in terms of the books and where we are with the books, I think he has one of the best character arcs in terms of really like breaking out of some extremely abusive situations, toxic mindsets, and he's not a great guy still, but he's so much has changed, and I'm really interested to see, like, if you were going to ask me the thing that I'm most interested in seeing in the next book, it is probably honestly seeing where Jamie's development goes in the books versus where it went in the show. Because one of the things, and I know we're not really talking about the show that much on here, but one of the things that, obviously there's tons of things to be pissed off about in the, particularly in the second half of season 8, but the way they just completely discard his entire character arc in the last like 2 episodes was just
outrageous.
like, what the fuck? Honestly, what the fuck? And again, I don't want to be like, oh, Jamie's the best, but like also it was such a waste, and so just like, wow, you just did not give a shit. And of course, they also did a huge disservice to Daenerys and to other characters, but like, goddamn.
Yep.
And I'll talk about some of the other things that I'm excited to learn more about in the future when we get to some of the other prompts. But character-wise, that's where I'm at.
All right, Nami, what about you? Fave characters?
Okay, so my top 3 are very much girl power. Because they are Sansa, Arianne, and Marjorie. Arya would have made this list when I like first started, but Sansa has replaced her because I did that thing where I was like, oh wow, girls can be strong without holding a sword, and mind wholly blown because children. But yeah, they're my favorite. Pretty sure I already explained Arianne. Marjorie, I love her because she's just out here thriving, and I just like, I see like her as like kind of like the queen bee, but in a not terrible way, because the queen bee she's trying to overthrow is like literally the worst ever, the worst. And I enjoy her a lot, and all I want for her is old age when she can also become Olenna. But show makes me think she's not getting old, but a girl could hope. And then I love Sansa because well, yeah, she's the one that really taught me that, like, real strength does not need to be like in being everything like masculine. She's the one that taught me that you can have steel and strength in femininity, and in being soft and believing in fairy tales and in believing in stories, and that you could still like have that power, and that sometimes the power to endure is more important than like a lot of other things. From a former depressed kid, like, Sansa kind of actually got me through a lot of shit, because it was like, hey, like, she can get through this, so you can get through this too. Which is yup, there it is. All right, we're gonna run away from those emotions. Bye, emotions, don't want them.
Nick is raising his hand. I don't know if that's like a.
Oh, that's so polite.
Yeah, because I don't want to jump in on Nami's like, these are my favorite characters things, but like 2 things I wanted to talk about real quick based on what you were saying. One is on Sansa. One of the things that actually drove me to love her more, like, I was already loving her, but one of the things that drove me to love her more was the amount of hate that she got and how undeserved that hate is. Fuck you if you hate Sansa.
Snaps.
You are basically a sexist person who believes that the only way that a woman can be a strong character is by committing violence. Fuck all the way off. Secondly, Marjorie is a fucking queen, and I hope she gets better than she got in the series. Although, admittedly, I understand that part of the reason why she died in the series was because Natalie Dormer wanted off the show so she could pursue other things. So that might have been less. I don't know why they chose the path that they did for Marjorie, but I know that at least somewhat influenced that
I mean,
decision.
she's not a queen; she's the queen.
So there's still hope, is what I hear.
Yes.
But continuing my Tyrell obsession, I do have to say that my favorite minor character, as I already mentioned earlier, is Willis. And I live in the fantasy land of what would have actually happened if Sansa and Willis were able to get married and live happily ever after in Highgarden with all their flowers, and how cute that would be. But like, low-key, high-key just love Willis and like this really sweet lad who was like, ah yes, I have been maimed by horse, but horse maiming friend is still my friend because that was clearly not intentional. Duh. Like what a good lad. What a sweet
What
lad.
a good lad.
Also, I'm always here for like, disability rep, and like Willis is just out here doing it. And I'm really upset he wasn't on the show, but also at the same time I'm kind of glad he wasn't because I don't want to know how they would have messed that up too.
I don't know
Yep.
if we're ever gonna see him in person in the books either, to be honest, which is probably why he was cut from the show. Is my
Yeah,
thought.
but a girl can dream, right? Maybe
Yeah.
like after the whole world is burnt down, like Sansa will run into Willis one day and be like, oh! And he'll be like, oh! And they'll be like, oh! That's that sound, by the way, that like throat that my throat is destroyed from being miscellaneous non-COVID sick gasp is what I think romance sounds like. So there y'all go.
Faith POV character though.
So this is a bit out of left field, but my favorite POV character is actually Cersei because I just love seeing how unhinged she is. Like she is not here at all, and she is not having a good time. And there's something immensely satisfying and entertaining about reading that. Because, like, as much as I say that Cersei is one of my favorites, she's not my favorite person. She's my favorite character. So seeing her suffer does indeed spark joy. And seeing all of the things that she does to herself because she's absolutely insane is, like, really, really entertaining. It's very good storytelling. It's just so fun. I don't leave a Cersei chapter unentertained, and I always leave a Cersei chapter going, what the fuck unhinged shit did I just read?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's kind of, I both love and hate her chapters because you're right, it's good writing, but also at the same time, it's like, oh my God, you're so dumb right now. Like, stop being so.
I feel like I read Cersei chapters in the same way that I watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like, I've resigned to myself that these are terrible people. I've resigned to myself that these are terrible people and they're always going to make the stupidest decisions and things are never going to go correctly for them because they are bad people, and it's entertaining. It's like the entertainment that I get from watching like if Trump owned a dumpster and that was the dumpster that was on fire that led to the dumpster fire meme, that is the same entertainment that I get from reading Cersei chapters and from watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's shitty people suffering and making terrible choices for themselves as you look at them and go, why are you making such terrible choices? That's obviously wrong. And they go, correct.
I love this take. I love this analogy to It's Always Sunny. I love you. All right, so Jonathan, what about you? Favorite characters, favorite POV characters,
So
etc.
my favorite character is Arya, but that's probably because I'm a total sucker for PTSD impacted teen killers. Going to the Hunger Games and the TV series and movie Hannah or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, all of them I love. Anyway, I think Jaime is my other favorite character and my favorite POV character. I think he's had the best story arc so far, and my reading of the books is one of the themes of Martin is even though he's deconstructed fantasy, there is a serious line of characters who are trying to undergo redemptive arcs, and Jaime has the most is most along and in that process of the other. I think Sir Barristan is also attempting to redeem himself for his own decisions, and there are some others. And there are some who don't give a damn about redemption. But anyway, Ariane is my third favorite character, and that's in the book. If we're going show, it's Alana, and basically because that was my first crush. Diana Rigg from the Avengers was my first crush, especially as embarrassing as it is to admit it. In the episode where she was in the Hellfire Club, and had a snake around her and an outfit that was banned from TV in England for almost 30 years. And then the minor character I mentioned, Jenna, who just that one scene is, I think, my all-time favorite in all the books with her and Jamie.
Oh, so. Yeah, Jenna Lannister is great. So for me, my top 3 characters have not, despite, I can't count how many times I've reread these books. For the earlier books, it's been at least a dozen. For the later books, maybe a couple less. But for me, my favorite characters haven't really changed all that much. Sandor, I fucking love Sandor. That might be also like a weird obsession with like PTSD dude who is very angry and Sansa. Yes, I was a Sansa stan. I get the implications. I don't agree with the age difference, etc., but whatever. It is what it is. And
hey, we're allowed to like things that are problematic as long as we don't believe.
As long as we know they're problematic and we're not like So Sandor, Sansa, and weirdly enough, when I read A Game of Thrones, I didn't like Sansa when I read A Game of Thrones because she's very much portrayed like the first time you see her is through Arya's eyes, and on the first read when you're kind of rushing, or for me when I was kind of rushing through it, it really seemed like, oh, Arya is the cool girl who's like badass and she wants to go like play swords with her brother and do archery and stuff, and Sansa's just there sewing and shit. And then everything happens with Joffrey and the wolves and all that stuff, and Sansa looks like the bad guy, quote unquote, because she doesn't she basically can't tell what actually happened because she's so fucking scared, right? But like on my first read of A Game of Thrones, it was like, oh Jesus, what the hell, Sansa? Like you didn't just talk, like you didn't just say the things. But again, going back and or once I got through Clash of Kings, honestly, and then eventually when I went back and reread A Game of Thrones, you see it through, or I saw it through such a different light where Sansa was in the first chapter, in Arya's first POV chapter, where Sansa's actually like very kind and she's like being very political. I don't even want to say she's really just being kind to, like, I think it's Beth Cassell and Jane Poole. Like she's like trying to teach them how to needlework. Oh, we've lost Jonathan again. I don't know. She's trying to teach them how to needlework and stuff. And, because you're seeing it through Arya's eyes, if you're reading it too quickly, it looks like Sansa's being rude, but actually she's not at all. And then later you see that she's so scared of being shoved in front of the king and queen. And she does want this thing with Joffrey so much, even though he was bad, whatever. It's a lot of, it took me getting through Clash of Kings and then going back and rereading Game of Thrones to realize I had the completely wrong vision of Sansa. And a lot of that was me reading through the first book too fast, I think. And
I think the other thing that I will give credit where credit's due, like when Sansa, like as a sister, Sansa's not always the greatest sister because she does bully Arya, and like she is not the best sister to Arya, but she is genuinely trying to be a better person, or like she's genuinely trying to be a kind person. And I think that's a really interesting dichotomy because like for a lot of like Game of Thrones, like because you are seeing so much through Arya's POV, like Sansa is not a good sister. She isn't. And I do actually like that about her, because like she grows from that too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as much as God, I hated the despicable season 8. The one thing that I did enjoy about that was how they were both so good at being sisters now that they were okay with like playing off that obvious animosity that everyone thinks they must feel for each other while secretly having each other's backs like the whole time, because they know that's what actually matters now. Like, that was the thing that I can't believe I'm saying this, but season 8 did get something correct, and it was that.
There were some good things in season 8, but they also then destroyed everything.
Yeah. Anyway, so Sansa turned out to be one of my favorite characters very quickly, actually. Like, it didn't take me that long, but I do well. And also, like, it's not even that I regret not liking her at first, because I do think that we're not supposed to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the way she's portrayed, we're not supposed to, but whatever. Like, you go, if you don't like like Nick said, if you don't like Sansa, you suck. The end.
Yep.
Jamie
If
is
you
my
don't like Sansa after book 1, you are reasonable. If you don't like Sansa at all,
Yes.
ever after seeing everything, you're a garbage dirtbag, and I will bury you in the ground with my fists.
but like Nick said, Jamie also great. So he's my third favorite character. I don't know, like, I don't know how much I agree about the idea of like a general character arc for him, because like there's some things you can't come back from, and I'm talking about pushing Bran out of a window, right? Like, we don't need to talk about the bad joke.
Child murder is a little bit point of no return.
We don't need
It
to
happens early though, y'all. He can come back. He can redeem.
we don't need to talk about the bad show, right? But
Yeah.
I do love Jamie, and the reason I love Jamie is because we got his POV chapters, and if we'd never gotten those, I wouldn't have felt this way about him. But yeah, seeing into his head was what made me just, as fucked up as he is, and he still is. I mean, let's not forget that in Feast for Crows or Dance of Dragons, I am blanking on which one it was, he threatens to throw Edmure Tully's baby over the walls of River Run via trebuchet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that
Feast for
is
Crows.
Yes, that's the game we have at Ice and Fire.
Yeah, that
We
man
have
is
mini
fully,
trebuchets,
like,
and we have mini babies, and you can launch them over a wall.
yeah, no,
Amazing.
Jamie has not exited his child murder phase.
But you know, I love
Everybody has one character flaw.
I love Jamie. I love reading his chapters. I love it so much. So real quick before I get into my favorite POV character, my favorite minor character is Dolores Ed. By far. Listen, dude is funny as fuck. He's so fucking quotable. He's so deadpan. He's so just sad about life. Hence his, nickname, Dolores Ed.
Mm-hmm.
I love him. My favorite thing of his is when he talks about how the cook Hob at Castle Black made this roast chicken, and it was amazing. It was stuffed with all these things, and he's like, because the whole thing started with, I hate prunes, and then Hob made this chicken, and it was this amazing chicken, and it was stuffed with all these things. It was like stuffed with oats and carrots and blah 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 and prunes. And he says, never trust a cook. They'll prune you when you least expect it. Easy Dubs, in my opinion, the Dolores Ed's chicken in the Feast of Ice and Fire cookbook is the best recipe in there. I haven't made all of them, but I have made that one several times because it is fucking delicious. The stuffing that you actually put in it, like the carrots, the oats, the prunes, there's something about like the sweetness of the carrots and the prunes that just, it's perfect. Anyway, random aside. Nice. So favorite POV character for me, actually, though, is Brienne. And I know that a lot of people hate Brienne's POV chapters, but for my part, there's something she's so strong and she's so good and she's so vulnerable. And she is absolutely the truest knight of the series. And again, not the, we don't want to talk about the show too much, but we are going to bring it up because it has to be brought up. Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, when they knight her in that episode, like, especially because she's my favorite POV character, and she just, even though in the show they did her wrong by making her kind of a murderer, like, immediately, when in the books she doesn't actually ever kill somebody until she's defending herself and Nimbledick Crab and Pod in the, I'm blanking on the area that they're in, but like, she's defending herself and her guide and her squire, and that's the first time she's ever killed anybody, and she's a mess about it, right? So even though in the show they kind of made her a murderer, like, immediately, maybe not murderer, but killer immediately, that episode, like, the episode as a whole was probably the best one of season 8, and when they made her a knight, it was just like, and also just because she's probably a descendant of Dunk, and she also ends up with his shield, and like, she doesn't. Sorry, she repaints her shield based on a shield that she has seen in the castle on her island, right? And it's Dunk's shield that she remembers. So she's a descendant of Dunk, which makes sense because she's gigantic. And I love all the things about Brienne, and I will not stand for anybody saying her chapters are bad or boring. Like, she's great. She's great, and I love her, and I love reading her chapters. That is not the way I felt when I first read them, but the second time, and that's a big part of the reason why Feast for Crows is my favorite, honestly. I was hesitant to mention that earlier and spoil my on favorite POV character, but I fucking love Brienne's. I love her chapters. Like,
so actually, interesting thing. So I was talking to somebody at Ice and FireCon this year, and she turned me on to a new ship, which is that I was telling her, my problematic fave ship is Sansa, and she was like, "Have you considered Brienne and Sansa?" And I was like, "Oh my god, I have not." And she's like, "Yeah, well,
is that problematic?"
Well, no. Well, Brienne and Sansa, like,
ain't gonna happen.
Age difference thing, but also Brienne is 19, so she is still.
Yeah, Sandor is like 30.
30, yeah. So it's already much better. And the other thing is, it's better if it's gay.
And also it's not Sandor. So.
Exactly, and it's like
Sansan is the problematic ship that I will always just.
Yeah.
Look, at least it's not Littlefinger and Sansa. Then I would have to fight you.
People who actually ship that, like, I need to just chuck them off the bridge.
I know people who ship that, and whose favorite character is Littlefinger, and I can't with them.
My husband cosplays Littlefinger very, very well. I might add, when he does the hair and when he does the whole thing, he is very tall, but otherwise very much looks like Aidan Gillian. Concerningly well. And I just every time I see him in it, I'm like, like, love this guy, so attracted to him, love him so much. Cannot stand when he wears that Littlefinger costume. Like, I just, nope, don't want it. And I did actually cosplay Sansa to his Littlefinger for a very brief amount of time at Ice and FireCon 2019. And the best picture I have of the two of us, no, there's two. I have one where I'm chugging a bottle of champagne with him next to me being creepy. Like, Sansa has to drink to stand this. And the other one is we're standing with our friends Ellen and Greg, who bring their corgis to Ice and FireCon, and they had their corgi. I can't remember if it's Ellen or Greg who had their corgi in their arms. I think it was their male corgi, Spitfire or Whirlwind. I can't remember which one it was, but the corgi's like twisted around, and I'm kissing it, like it's licking my nose, and Dean as Littlefinger is like standing there next to me, and my forever caption for that is "Get her a dog; she'll be happier for it."
Oh
So
my god.
you know. Okay, so now we're gonna dig into some theories, and this is. I want to hear your favorite, possibly slash probably legitimate theory. R plus L equals J doesn't count. If you guys don't believe that R plus L equals J is real, then we can't be friends probably. And then I also want to hear, if you have one, your favorite tinfoil theory. So Nami, you go first.
Okay, so my favorite actual theory is, classic Jaime kills Cersei. I love the idea of Cersei fearing Tyrion this whole last time, but it was Jaime. Dun dun dun. Yeah, no, love that. Big fan of that. It's him. Nobody will ever change my mind. And my favorite tinfoil theory is that R plus L equals J, because everybody knows that's obviously fake. Just kidding. Sorry. I told myself, I was like, you're gonna try to like poker face this and say it, and then even as I was saying it, I felt like a violent like rejection from my body, because I've always been an R plus L equals J, and I was one of those people cheering when it like happened in the show. And basically, my favorite like tinfoil theory is that Tyrion is secretly a Targaryen. I believe I first heard this theory like in depth at like a San Diego Comic-Con panel that Tara was on, where they were talking about theories, and I was like, this one's mine. I like this one. And I cuddled it close, and I held it near and dear to my bosom, and there it rests for all its days, because I enjoy it conceptually.
So my favorite, possibly slash probably legit theory is Benjen knew, capital B, capital K. Benjen knew that R plus L equals J. I didn't actually know about this theory until it was a while ago, but it's been something that's been mentioned in a couple of podcasts that I've listened to over the years, and it wasn't something I ever picked up reading the books myself, honestly. So I love that it is a theory that exists, and the more I've listened to people talk about it, the more I realize that that's why he went into the Night's Watch, right? Like, Eddard had to tell somebody, but also like Lyanna and Benjen, from what we've kind of seen through Bran, were pretty close as well, because I believe they were closer in age maybe than her and Ned were. I believe absolutely that Benjen knew that Rhaegar and Lyanna were together and birthed Jon, and that is why he is part of the Night's Watch. Now, I mean, maybe not the only reason, but it's certainly up there. My favorite tinfoil theory, I gotta go with Chloe. Our friend Chloe, who is also on the Ice and Firecon Small Council, close friend of mine, introduced me to my husband unknowingly years ago. Her favorite theory is that Ashara Dane didn't actually throw herself off a tower, but is married to Howland Reed and living happily in the neck with him. And she's the mother. Ashara Dane is the mother of Mira and Jojen. And honestly, like the only reason why this is my favorite tinfoil theory is because I love Chloe so much, and she is so fucking into it that it's just like I gotta get behind you on this. Like, I still think it's tinfoil, even if she doesn't, but it's still my favorite theory. So Nick, what about you?
Wait, I'm so sorry. I have to jump in 3 seconds because I forgot my real favorite theory, which I just messaged in all caps to you guys in our little private chat. But it is the theory that only the Targaryen girls can make dragons hatch, and that if you sort of like track it back through all like the dragons that have happened, they have all hatched 4 Targaryen men who have been close to other women in their lives. So these women were around that egg as well, in theory. So like the theory that a dragon egg will only hatch in the presence of a woman is
we
favorite.
talked about that on one of our Comic-Con panels.
Yeah, that's where I first learned that one. I was like, oh shit, that's amazing. And God, also there was, I can't remember if it was the theory or if there was another theory, but there was like a theory that had something to do with genetics, and it might be that one. But I remember being
I think it's that one.
I think it's that one, yeah. But yeah, it was really good. I enjoy that one. Okay, bye. Sorry for cutting you off, Nick. I'm the worst.
That's totally okay. You're not the worst. There's so many people who are worse than you.
I was real concerned there.
I know. So my favorite theory that better end up being canon, George R.R. Martin, is that Jaime kills Cersei. Completely agree with Nami. Like, if that does not happen, that is just a wasted opportunity.
What? They don't get buried under like a pile of tiny rocks, and somehow that is actually
fucking fact. If instead of Jaime riding off to just be with Cersei, Jaime had ridden off to fucking murder Cersei, I would have been like, fuck yes.
Chef's kiss.
But no, they did not do that.
Also, never allowed to make Brienne cry. Not allowed.
Yes,
period.
Absolutely. How dare you? You are the worst. My favorite tinfoil theory is that in the books, the Night King will actually win. That he will actually be the undoing of all of this fucking mess that has been going on. And then people will have to like actually deal with the fallout of that and deal with like whether that's them coming together in a way that they never would have otherwise, or whether there are just like really fucking serious, almost post-apocalyptic consequences to the Night King winning. I think that would be really cool to see.
All right, Jonathan, what about you?
So my favorite theory, and I really haven't seen it all that much, but it's my own theory, is that young Griff is actually completely legitimate. I also think he's totally doomed, however, but I do believe he is legitimate. My favorite tin pot theory, which is completely fan fiction tin pot, is that the 7 are actually Asgardians, and the others are left over from their wars with the Frost Giants.
That is amazing. All right, okay, throwing my old theories out the goddamn window.
So I want to throw in on this whole Griff thing. If you were to have Daenerys actually go mad, that could be a really compelling way to start that process. Having her kill off a legitimate threat to her rule, either through direct action or allowing it to happen. And then you could actually start building for why she ends up becoming a mad queen versus it coming out of nowhere, essentially.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, whether or not he's legitimate, I think that he is actually going to be a big part of Daenerys going mad, because he lands in Westeros before her, and he's going to have allies, particularly in the Martells.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I do absolutely think that regardless of his legitimacy, Aegon is going to be part of her going mad. All that said, if you're watching this and you haven't watched Queens, which is our parody musical of featuring music from 6, but Song of Ice and Fire characters and lyrics, it is a love letter to the fandom. There is an interlude in that musical about Aegon Targaryen, or featuring Aegon Targaryen, using Tinder, essentially, to decide which queen he's going to marry, and it's made very clear that he's not legitimate, right, through the dialogue. But it's our friend Daisy, who played Aegon, like, they were absolutely amazing. And
That's
the
awesome.
whole thing, and also our friend Joy, who plays Varys, they were just like, the whole interlude is absolutely hilarious. So if you haven't watched that, please do. Now, speaking of that, favorite fandom moments, and I'm just gonna go first because I've already like kind of talked about one of them, I guess. For me, it's kind of obvious. Everything about Ice and Fire Con. I like, I'm trying to figure out how I can talk about this without getting super emotional.
Impossible, just do it.
Yeah, like, not just the fact that I have met two of my closest friends, Jonathan, or well, Nami, I guess I didn't meet you at Ice and FireCon, but I met you because of it, right? Because I've met so many amazing people through Ice and FireCon, and it's fucking hard work, and it's stressful, and I get like, but all the bad things that have kind of like all the hard parts of it, right? They never ever come even close to overwhelming the amazing parts of it, which is seeing this group of people come together who are such big fans, mostly, and I would say 99% of the people who attend the convention have read the books, right? And the insane cosplay that we see, and the Saturday night dance party where like, sometimes I'm participating in it, and sometimes, like in 2019, I remember sitting on the sidelines, or maybe I wasn't sitting, I think I was actually leaning against a stack of chairs, but I was on the sidelines watching this giant circle of people who, so many of them hadn't even known each other before the weekend, and they're all just dancing like crazy to current, pop music, whatever, having a blast, and nobody's judging anybody, and nobody, like, we just have a really great group of people. Like, over all the years, like, that's the one overwhelming thing about this event, is that it's so welcoming and everybody is so kind, and and it's so much fun. Stupid. Like, it's stupid fun, right? Like, you're literally sitting outside watching people having LARP, who have never done LARP before, have like LARP sword fights, like just kind of waving shit around and like hoping they hit each other. And then like the jousting, the pool noodle jousting, where you're riding a stick horse, smacking each other with pool noodles. And I will never, I will never not be overwhelmed by the amount of support that the fandom community has offered us. I mean, recently there was an article that was posted where it was like the first ever Game of Thrones convention. And it was, I only saw it posted on Twitter, so it might have been on Facebook, whatever. But the comments from people and the retweets, and they're just like, excuse me, have you just completely ignored like these other conventions that have existed? And like, so many of them were about Ice and FireCon. And but then also I got to be in these two musicals that Westeros being the first one, which is a Hamilton Game of Thrones parody, and we did like a workshop of it in 2018, and then we did a full 2-hour version that Nami was also in 2019, and it went kind of semi-viral. And then we did Queens this year, and after, like, it was planned for Ice and FireCon 2020. So we've been sitting on this shit. I sat, like, all of us who are in the cast we signed NDAs and sat on this shit for 2.5 fucking years, maybe longer. I can't remember the timing, but just being involved in these things that are such love letters to the fandom, like the references, just everything. I just, like, cosplay to me has always been kind of secondary, right? I have a blast doing it, but I actually have not cosplayed Song of Ice and Fire stuff outside of Ice and FireCon for a very long time, even though that's how Nick and I met. So yeah, it for me, it's just all of that. It's all of that. It's all of that. Nick, what about you?
For me, partially because I haven't done Ice and Fire Con, and I haven't really done a whole lot of fandom things in a very, very long time. It's just getting to meet you, and then subsequently, obviously not directly, but in part because of it, getting to meet Jonathan Nami. So that's it.
To be fair, like, even though my costume was like Book Cersei, somehow I was the only Cersei at DragonCon that year. Like, we have some great pictures.
Oh my gosh, we do.
And then when we did our like modern game, the modern Game of Thrones group, where we were like business people, Jamie and Cersei, with yeah. Really good memories. And I mean, really, like, especially our cosplay group, that was the earliest memory I have of being in this fandom in person. I had been in it online for years, but that was the first one I have of being in it in person. And the fact that, the person who ran the cosplay group, our friend Kayla, I was like, listen, I don't have the sewing skills because there were no patterns for Game of Thrones costumes at that point. So I was like, I don't have the sewing skills to make this shit. I'm making like a Book Cersei costume. Are you okay with this? And she said, yeah. And yeah, and I was super hungover and like drinking a Bloody Mary the entire time we were photo shooting. Yeah, exactly. So, Nami, what about you?
So obviously Ice and FireCon stuff as well, like, Westeros, the musical, I was in that as well, which was so fun. I still remember watching like the preview, and it was me and a couple friends that I had not become close with because I had just met that year, but we were like low-key heckling, but like lovingly, because we were also like huge Hamilton fans and theater people, so it's just really, really funny. And then low-key we all joke that the reason we were in the musical next year is because they were like, y'all are a fucking distraction, at least be a distraction. But one of my fondest memories though is Game of Thrones or Ice and FireCon 2019, and we watched the horrific all darkness war battle. Like this, we have like a tradition of like when new episodes were coming out, because like new seasons would come out around the same time that the convention would occur, so we would end up watching like episode 7 or 8 depending on how the season fell on Sunday of Ice and FireCon. And this was the first year that I was able to stay for that Sunday and like account for that, so we got to like watch the full darkness battle of like, it's too dark and we can't see anything, what the fuck is happening. And
the low quality like projector to screen.
Oh yes. The funniest thing, of course, was watching that on the projector and being like, wow, the quality on this projector is extra bad this year. And then everyone going home and watching it and being like, no, it was just quality is just really bad.
It's only like 10% better on a TV.
It's hilarious. But yeah, just like everybody in that room together and like gasping and cheering and screaming at the same time was really amazing and like lovely. And also, so I'm a San Diego Comic-Con goer. I've been going with my dad, and like, this is not so much a fandom thing because the reason my dad and I would watch Game of Thrones together. And so because of that, when we went to San Diego Comic-Con, we would always go to Hall H to try to catch the Game of Thrones panels. And so that was a good time. And my dad would camp out, for like 2 days to get our tickets into Hall H. But
we heckin' did it, and we got to see some cool shit because of it, and that was always lovely. And then finally, the first time I really did like Game of Thrones cosplay in public was actually at Dragon Con, and like Dragon Con has like cosplay gatherings at like this little park with an arch, and I just remember going there and it was so fun. And I still have a picture to this day of everyone in the show who had died up until that point doing the Thriller dance together because we were all zombies, and it was just really funny and sweet. And I've met a lot of my bestest friends in the world through Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire and Ice and Fire Con. So this book has a very dear place in my heart, even though everyone dies.
All right, Jonathan, what about you? Favorite fandom moments?
So I was Nami's evening watching the season 8 Battle for Winterfell episode, and then in my case talking about it literally till 5:30 in the morning was epic. But
yep.
Ironically, a year before that, I did something similar, and a shout out to Haley Bowery and the Manimals, who held a combination burlesque concert and watch party. Concert being they played their album The Seven, which is a Game of Thrones themed album. And I would say it's not really fan fiction, but it is fan fiction. And it is not their best album, so I think Multiverse is actually a much better album if you're a music fan. And I want to sell and plug their album because I love their music. But they also had a watch party of the season 7 finale in this, quite honestly, fire trap in Brooklyn. And that was actually the second venue. The first venue, we got a text like 3 hours before we were supposed to be going there that the venue had changed, and it was like this super secret party that we had to go to. And then we entered this, what I thought was literally a fire trap. And I said, oh my God, if there's a fire, we're all dead. And then after the watch party and the concert and the burlesque, Haley and all the Ice and Fire Con alums who were there, it was probably like 10 of us, went and climbed up on this very rickety ladder up onto the roof of this fire trap and really we're now really dead if there was a fire. And enjoyed ourselves and had some beers and, well, in my case, a Diet Coke.
It wasn't a song of Ice and Fire. It was just a song of possible fire.
Yeah, it was a song of possible fire. There was no ice, but it was a really good time. And again, a plug for Haley's band, The Manimals.
No, yeah, for sure. They are. If you've never listened to the Manimals, I love them. I probably need. I've heard a lot of their other music, but I haven't heard their Multiverse album, at least not in totality. But yes, for sure, if you're a Song of Ice and Fire fan, you absolutely need to listen to 7 by the Manimals. It's so good, and they are such fun, great people, and they're so like integrated into the fandom. I mean, Haley is in a relationship with Zach, who is one of the hosts of Game of Owns, which is, I think, the first like true Game of Thrones show only podcast. But yeah, they're highly suggest listening to their music, particularly 7.
Yeah. And her podcast that she did, which was a drinking Game of Thrones Brooklyn, which basically discussed the show for the last few seasons, was hysterical and epic also. So if you want to go back and listen to people who are absolutely hammered riff on the show, it's pretty fun and entertaining.
All right. Well, last but not least, you guys, House of the Dragon, aka Hot D, premieres this Sunday. What are you most looking forward to seeing? Nick, you get to go first this time.
I'm just looking forward to some Hot D, you know?
I fucking love that is, like, they were using the hashtag HOTD on Facebook or on Twitter, and I don't know which fan started calling it Hot D. It might have been Chloe, it might have been somebody else, but the fact that somebody latched onto that and started calling it Hot D is my favorite thing. So
I'm proud. I'm so proud.
what I'm actually looking forward to the most is just having new Game of Thrones content that might actually wash the ashes of season 8 out of our mouths.
Mhm.
Same hat.
All right, Jonathan, what about you? What are you most looking forward to from House of the Dragon?
You know, I just that it's on and it exists. I haven't really thought about what I'm most looking forward to in the show. I What I'm most fearful of is there'll be no mushroom. But but I have not. I really haven't thought about what I'm most looking forward to be honest. I'm excited for new Song of Ice and Fire content. As much as people hated the last few seasons of the show, I still found them extraordinarily entertaining and enjoyed watching them, even though it was a relative train wreck. So, as long as it's competent in quality, actually, maybe that's a bad thing. If it's competent, it will be disappointing. If it's really bad or really good, I'll love it.
I mean, George R. R. Martin is way more involved in this than he was in Game of Thrones. He actually handpicked the showrunner for this, so I have high hopes. Hopefully, not too high.
Well, I mean, I think what's really most interesting about this is we've read this story as a history book. So we do not have the details of dialogue and character development that a show will emphasize compared to reading a history book.
But I think that's where it's got a huge heads up on Game of Thrones is that we don't have that. So they have the story to follow, right? But they can expand upon it as much as they want. And we're not stuck on a whole bunch of specifics. And yeah. So yeah. Nami, what about you?
Oh, I forgot I hadn't gone yet. Oopsies. Well, I'm a cosplayer at heart, so I'm honestly looking forward to the cosplay. And you're right, I'm also looking forward to the extra detail because, full disclosure, I have not gotten around to reading Fire and Blood because all my brain does when I look at it, it goes Silmarillion, not again. And
No. It is not. It is not the Silmarillion. I can tell you that.
And see, logically, I know that, but that need deep fear is still within me, and also the book is yeah big, and my body just goes no. I have commitment issues. Okay. But yeah, no, I'm just really excited for more Game of Thrones cosplay. Costuming, the costuming talent that has come out of people trying to recreate these costumes and the intention to things like embroidery ever since that has been absolutely astonishing. And the connections that you get in the fandom because of that is also great. I'm a part of so many Daenerys costuming groups, Sansa costuming groups, Marjorie costuming groups, even though I only cosplayed Dorne and Sansa this one time, and it's just really great to have all of these communities that are so built around learning how to make these costumes and figuring out how to make this the most accurate way as possible, or if you can't afford the accurate stuff because obviously that's very price prohibitive, also finding ways to get around that and making it look as screen accurate as possible without breaking the bank. And it's really cool fandom stuff, and I'm excited to see that continue because it's a lot of good vibes on the internet that we're in the internet, which is not always filled with good vibes. So hype for that. I am hyped for more content, and I'm also hyped just to see Matt Smith doing things in a fandom that I'm interested in again, because I do love that lad. I'm excited for him to be, evil instead of just vaguely unhinged and wearing a fez. So that'll be interesting. And also, I'm excited because dragons were the beginning and not this weird won't they make the dragons good for 5 seasons? And
or will they just make dragons and Ghost just disappears?
Right,
we get no Ghost. John can't even pet him goodbye because they're too busy making dragons.
He ghosted us for dragons.
Well, I actually read something where ironically, they said it was much easier to do a reptilian dragon with the special effects than it was to make a wolf look real.
Yeah, I think I read that too.
Makes sense. Fur is hard. Hair is hard.
Nick, you have your hand raised. So polite.
I do.
Politest little lad. Just look at
Nami,
him.
have you watched Pride and Prejudice and Zombies?
Yes.
Oh,
I
it's
have.
great.
Okay, because that's one. It's just a fun movie, and two, you get to get a little bit of Matt Smith being a villain. So.
Oh, okay. Well, but
I'll second
did
Pride
forget
and
about
Prejudice
that.
for Zombies. It is much better than the original.
Oh, boo.
Well,
The book
come
or the
on,
original
Jonathan.
Pride and Prejudice?
Come
The original
on,
Pride and
Jonathan.
Prejudice.
Well, I'm gonna be honest.
Boo.
I'm not really. I realized, like, in the same way that I disliked Temeraire because of like all of like the high society manners dialogue that happened. That's also the same reason that I'm not super into like Regency romance a la Jane Austen. Like, I'll read it, I'm fine with it, but also at the same time, there's a tiny ball of rage inside me at the prospect. That's all.
Adding in zombies is fantastic, and
I do
the
love me
movie
some
is a lot of
zombies.
fun. So check it out.
Well, so for my part, I don't know. Like, I'm really excited to see the opening theme. Weirdly enough, like,
Yeah.
I feel like it's one of those things where they have that's one of those things about Game of Thrones that I never had a complaint about. I feel like they have a lot to live up to. The opening theme of Game of Thrones, the music, the CG, everything about it was always amazing. The storytelling they did through that opening theme was amazing. So I'm really excited to see what they do with that. I am super excited for Corlys Valerian. I love that they cast a person of color in a role that, based on Martin's text, you wouldn't have assumed that would be like the Valerians are Targaryen relatives, right? So everybody just assumes, including Linda, that they should be white. And the fact that they cast a person of color, that also opens up a lot of other roles for people of color because Corlys has children. So I'm really excited about just, this is an amazing character, right? Like in Fire and Blood, the book, you get so much about the sea snake, and the fact that there's also, I think that if House of the Dragon does well, there's a very good chance that they're going to do a prequel series about his voyages, in which they will cast another, it will have to be somebody younger, but they will cast another person of color. And I don't think, I'm hoping this isn't pandering, because the actor that they cast in the Corlys Valerian role is amazing. But I'm really excited to see him. And I'm also, I'm excited, like you guys have already said, I'm excited for some content that will maybe wash out that sand in the mouth. Like, nobody likes sand. It gets everywhere. And it got in the mouth.
It's coarse and rough.
Yeah. Well, there were several seasons of Game of Thrones that were coarse and rough, and nobody wanted them.
My name is Nami Skywalker.
So, okay. Anybody have last thoughts before we close out? Yes, no? I can't believe that this is our 50th episode. I can't believe that it's been less than an hour and 40 minutes and we have gotten through all of our discussion.
You did a great outline.
I am a little bit sick and sleepy, so I am less interjecty, chatty, rambly than usual, but also shit. Damn it, I was so excited for that too.
Oh.
We're never gonna know what it was.
Well, it's our 50th episode. In October, we'll have been going for 2 years. Crazy.
Wow. Wild.
Crazy. Yeah.
And
so,
we're finally getting to the series that you got me into this podcast to do.
I mean, let's be real. I was putting it off because I was waiting for another book announcement, and now, you know, it's like we're doing it. We're doing it live. Even though the next book isn't coming out till May of next year, and there's apparently a 7th book that nobody was planning on. But you know, hey, okay. So as we close out this episode, we want to give a think out. Wow. As we close out this episode, we want to give a shout out to our Heroes Tier Patreon, Tommy. Wow, I can talk. As we close out the episode, we want to give a shout out to our Heroes Tier patron, Tommy of the TKOK Podcast Network. Thank you so much for supporting us. Once again, I'm Tara, along with Nick, Jonathan, and Nami. Don't forget that you can always hit us up at Sagas and Sass on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or email us at sagasandsass@gmail.com with any comments or thoughts you might have. Thank you for joining us for this episode. We will be back on Wednesday, September 21st to kick off our 4th season, which will be the most in-depth coverage we've ever provided on Pierce Brown's incomparable Red Rising saga. If you haven't yet read this series, we highly suggest picking it up. It's basically a sweeping space opera with Greek and Roman influences. And again, if you have not read it, you're definitely missing out. So we hope to see you next month. Bye.
Bye.